The Big Blue Box Podcast, Episode 4. Hello everyone, coming to you from somewhere in space and time. This is the Big Blue Box Podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. My name's Gary, and coming up in this episode we have the usual news roundup. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a subject that's been in my mind for the last couple of weeks, and I'm not sure why, but a slightly controversial subject is the key differences between the Russell T Davies and the Steven Moffat eras. They kind of get a lot of stick individually on their own, and it seems to be a lot of discussion. It seems to just pop up on forums now and then, just people kind of saying one thing about one era, and then somebody jumps in and completely demolishes it, and then they praise the other era, and then you get this kind of to in and throw in. So it's kind of been on my mind for a little while, last week or so. So I just want to put my thoughts out on that. And then we're going to jump into this episode's classic DVD retrospective, which is Colin Baker's Attack of the Cybermen. So without further ado, let's crack on with the news. So kind of a big one for Doctor Who this week. The 50th anniversary story, Day of the Doctor, has won the Radio Times Audience Award at the BAFTAs.
And the award goes to Doctor Who, Day of the Doctor. Wow, God, we're shocked. Honoured. It's a particularly special award because it's voted for by the viewers at home, and obviously that means a huge amount. I just have to say, we're really surprised. If we'd known, I think someone famous would be standing here. But anyway, loads of people to thank. Obviously, amazing producer Marcus, director Nick Curran, our brilliant cast: Matt Smith, David Tennant, Jenna Coleman, Billy Piper, John Hurt, and one person really missing tonight is Steven Moffat, showrunner. His ideas, his imagination supports the show and guides the show, and we're hugely grateful to him. But also, I do think it's worth saying that this award really is for anybody who's had a hand in Doctor Who over the last 50 years, because we celebrated our anniversary last year, so this is really special. Thank you very much. Thank you.
On the last podcast, you would remember me saying that that Doctor Who had picked up a couple of awards at the BAFTA Craft Television Awards, where that's more kind of more of an industry led awards and a bit more of the behind the scenes things. I'm assuming, whereas the BAFTAs that were on Sunday night, I believe, they're more of the proper BAFTAs. Can we say that? The proper ones. So yeah, Doctor Who's picked up a BAFTA, which is awesome. So the Day of the Doctor really sort of hammering home the good fight for the Doctor. And I love it when the Doctor wins this type of award, because this is the one that's voted for by the public, and it kind of just lays to rest all of the cynics and all of the guys that guys or gals, whatever, that kind of put this vibe out there sometimes about Doctor Who, where for some reason they start talking about dwindling viewer counts. They start talking about the popularity of Doctor Who taking a nosedive, and it's not what it was, and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of like the way that Steven Moffat kind of handles this, where he's kind of got this meh kind of attitude, like, yeah, whatever. He knows that he's doing a good job. He knows that Doctor Who is pulling in the numbers. I mean, last year was probably slightly different because of all of the extra material that was on because of the 50th anniversary, but still, I like it when Doctor Who wins these awards that are voted for by the public, because if Doctor Who was, according to these people, if Doctor Who was doing so badly and there wasn't enough there wasn't enough viewers coming through each week and that sort of thing, then it wouldn't be picking up these awards voted for by the public. So it kind of silences the cynics and the people that like to stir the pot, and so that's a really cool. And it was a really good night actually, because the Broadchurch guys picked up quite a lot. So obviously Broadchurch was a really, really good kind of classic whodunit tale that went out last year, starring David Tennant and Olivia Colman, and she's won her, I think it's her third BAFTA in a couple of years. So she starred opposite David Tennant in Broadchurch, and so her BAFTA was for leading actress, and that was really cool. And David Tennant was very, very cool in that. So it was kind of a Doctor Who-y kind of vibey night, to be honest with you. So that was cool. So Doctor Who picking up a BAFTA. So well done, the whole team, BBC Wales, all those guys. Really good stuff. And also it's another good thing, so I don't mean to go on about this, but another good thing that comes out of Doctor Who winning things like a BAFTA is that it really sort of nails home just how well the cast and crew and the writers and producers and stuff on the show, it just goes to show how much hard work they put into into the whole thing. It doesn't really go, we don't really praise those guys enough, because I think I said this on a previous podcast where a lot of people assume that because Doctor Who is one of the BBC's flagship shows, that it's got an endless budget and they can kind of do what they want, but it really isn't like that. They still haven't got as large a budget as what we think they have, so they still have to be creative in the ways that they make the show. And if you listen to any or read any interviews with people who have worked on Doctor Who, whether it be from the 2005 revival or way back throughout the classic years and stuff, there's always this vibe that people that they get to work on the show, they absolutely love the show and they put their whole, the 100% into it. And that is just testament really to those guys. So, so great news on that, on those guys winning the BAFTA, so well done. Next bit of news is there's been a cool video posted up on YouTube. If you remember back last year, there was that big rumour mill churning for a few months about somebody supposedly had got hold of a load of missing episodes, and this kind of went around the internet for a little while and around social media and stuff, that there was these lost episodes, and it was written off, it was too good to be true, and nobody kind of believed it and all that kind of stuff. And then that actually came to fruition. I don't think it was as much as what people were hoping for, but ultimately 9 episodes were found and returned to the BBC, and they were episodes from 2 of the Troughton stories, which was The Enemy of the World and The Web of Fear. So they were handed back to the BBC, and they were straight away put into the hands of the restoration team. So one of the members of that team, Paul Vanessa's, he's actually put a video up on YouTube of the kind of process they went through when they got these videos. So just a little bit of it's a bit technical, and it goes through like the clean-up treatment and there's a slight editing and that kind of stuff. But it's very cool to see it from their point of view. And obviously these are really important episodes because, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the Troughton era is that's the era where there's the most amount of missing episodes. Please correct me if I'm incorrect in that, but I think I think his run suffered the most from the budget of the BBC at the time, where they had this thing where there wasn't enough film to go round, so they started deleting film or recording over it because there just wasn't enough and they couldn't afford any. So that was a really good thing when they found that, and I'm pretty sure that there is more out there. I'm pretty sure that there is. We haven't seen the last of these lost episodes turn up in some shape or form. So let's hope in the near future we can get another load of episodes, because the more people that get to see it is just only a good thing. So I'll put a link in the show notes for that. That's a really good video. It's worth checking out. It's only about 5 minutes or so. That's very cool. Last bit of news. I'm a really big comic book guy. If you follow me personally on Twitter or Facebook, you would know that I run another blog which covers things like TV, movies, and comics and sci-fi and that sort of thing. So I'm a really big comic guy. So I was really excited when I first heard this bit of news a few months ago, actually, and it was Titan Comics have commissioned a new comic run, which is going to be out in July for the 10th and the 11th Doctors. And I saw this a few months ago, and I only saw the covers, and they looked very good in themselves. So I was quite intrigued by that. And then there was a trailer that was released. I think it was yesterday. Was it yesterday? As I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 21st of May, by the way. And I think it might have been, maybe a few days before. So there's been an actual proper trailer now. And again, I'll put the link to this in the show notes. But there's going to be 2 new comic runs. One will be the David Tennant 10th Doctor, and then the Matt Smith 11th Doctor. And there's also supposedly a 12th Doctor range based on Capaldi, which will be out later in the year. So they're from Titan Comics. They look very good. Check the trailer out. The artwork looks really, really good. Really top-notch stuff, and I'll definitely be picking these up. However, there is one slight caveat to this. For some strange... this thing that really kind of burns my bacon a little bit. There's kind of a disclaimer that's going out with the official news from Titan Comics, and that is because of licensing restrictions, the comics can only be bought digitally by people in the UK and Ireland. So if you live in the US or probably most other countries worldwide, you're going to be fine. You can pick up the actual physical comics. That's great. But for some bizarre reason, if you live in the UK or Ireland, you can't get the physical comic. You can only pick it up digitally. Now you can do that either. They're saying that you can do it through an app called Comixology, and if you're a comic book reader and you own an iPad and you don't own the app Comixology, you need to go and get that immediately. It's now owned by Amazon, so it's in the near future they're going to probably link that up with the Amazon Kindle ecosystem, so that'll make it easier to purchase comics. So as far as I know, it's definitely available. You can pre-order it now via Comixology. They're also saying it'll be available on Amazon Kindle and the Apple iBook store. So there are 2 or 3 different places that you can go and purchase it and pre-order digitally. But if you like your physical comics, you may have to get it imported, or check out a comic book store which has them, which kind of does imports anyway. I go to Forbidden Planet. I go to the store on Shaftesbury Avenue in London quite regularly, and I do see the odd import in there, so I might go in there or contact them before to see if they'll have it physically, because I do want to pick it up and keep hold of it and collect it as a physical item. But I'll also be pre-ordering the digital version. So that's kind of cool. They look really good. Check them out. Like I said, I'll put a link to in the show notes. So go and check it out. So that wraps up the news, and I'm now going to move on to my kind of ranty section. Well, it's not really a rant, but more of a kind of stuff that's on my mind. I just want to spill out and talk to you guys. And it's going to be about the kind of key differences between the Russell T Davies era and the Stephen Moffat era. And I want to just start off by saying I like both of them equally. I'm not one of these guys that has major issues with either of them. I really do enjoy both equally as much. I've got kind of more of a kind of a love relationship with the Russell T Davies era, because that's the one that I personally jumped into Doctor Who first. If you've listened to the first podcast episode that I did, when I told you a little bit about myself, I'm a slight latecomer to Doctor Who. I started watching it, the Matt Smith stuff had already started, and that's when I first started watching Doctor Who, but I had to go back and pick up the DVDs from Series 1 from 2005 and start watching them through. So although I started watching Doctor Who when it was on TV and Matt Smith was in the role, I actually didn't watch too much of it. I didn't want to get lost in that and then have to go and play catch up too much, so I just went straight back and started watching it from 2005 with Chris Eccleston. And because of that, my heart kind of lays a little bit with the Russell T Davies stuff, because it just had such an impact on me. And I've heard other people say the same thing, and they've also said it about the Moffat era as well, where they're kind of late to the party with Doctor Who, and then they just started watching the Matt Smith stuff, and once that had finished, in between seasons with Matt Smith, they went back and started watching the other stuff. And they said the same thing about the Moffat era, where that's the first batch of Doctor Who that they started watching. So it's almost like your first Doctor, or when people describe the Doctor as my Doctor and stuff like that, it's kind of like that with these kind of two very different eras of Doctor Who in the modern world. So I like them both equally. My heart does lay a little bit with the Russell T Davies, because that had more of an impact on me. But there has been a lot of, there's been a bit of chat on forums. I keep seeing the same threads come up and up every few months. It tends to die down for a while, and then somebody will say something or mention something, and somebody else will then jump in, and it will kind of go from there. I think one of the thread questions that I saw recently was, why is there so much hate towards Rose? And expectedly a few people jumped in and said, oh, it's because of XYZ, and then some other people jumped in and said, that's not fair, blah 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 blah. And then someone else jumped in and said, well, the Russell T Davies area was rubbish because of blah blah blah. The Stephen Moffat, the Matt Smith stuff is a lot better. And then somebody else jumped in and said, well, that's not true because of... And it just kind of goes back and forth. And like I said, I see this pop up regularly every few months. It tends to die down for a while, and then all it takes is one question, and then it's like an all-out war, if you like. And I think it's just a bit silly, if I'm honest with you. Because each era has got so much to offer. If you look at the Russell T Davies stuff, that really is a time when we really, really needed Doctor Who to be what it was and what they made it to be. They needed it to be, because bringing back a show like Doctor Who, it needs to hit a certain mark on a few different levels. So it needed to be very current at the time. It needed to be modern. It needed to be different, but the same. And I'll try and make sense of that statement. It needed to be different in a way that it needed to feel like it was a new show coming to TV. It needed to feel like it had that freshness to it, and that kind of, excuse the pun, that regeneration. But at the same time, because I think I might have read this somewhere years ago, that it could have gone one of two ways. It could have been, they could have done Doctor Who as a complete reboot and just ignored everything before. There was kind of very, very small talk of that. Or, thankfully the way they done it was they just kept, everything from 63 onwards. They kept that very much intact and kept it as canon. and built that into the show, and those references back to the older years is fantastic. So it needed to be those things at the time, but it also needed to be the same. So like I said, it needed to be different, it needed to feel fresh, new, but at the same time it needed to still be Doctor Who, because all of the fans that have been watching it for years and years and years, they haven't gone anywhere. They're still the same people. They still want the same things from the show, or they want similar things from the show. So Russell, I don't think we quite know just how much was on Russell T Davies's shoulders bringing the show back. It must have been so, just the pressure must have been huge for him, because if he got it wrong, then that's potentially a career breaker. But fortunately, it was all good. And the way that I think because there is such a divide with these two different eras, it's because at the end of the Russell T Davies era, you had not just the actor leaving the role, you had some key people leaving in terms of behind the scenes as well. So along with David Tennant going, obviously Russell T Davies stepped down, and then you had the top producer, another producer, a couple of the writers, some of the crew and stuff. They all decided to leave at the same time. So it's a bit like leaving your school year and then going back the next year, and your form tutor's completely different, you're in a different class, your timetable's different, it's completely different, but you're in the same place. So when Moffat took over, he's now stepped into the plate. We've got a new doctor, new producers, all that kind of stuff, and the whole vibe is completely different. And one of the biggest issues that I had with the Moffat era when I started to watch through it was his reluctance to mention pretty much anything to do with the Russell T Davies stuff. I think Matt Smith's very first episode, the 11th Hour, near the end where he's on the roof, and he's kind of going through, he kind of putting the scarers on the big eyeball thing. I can't remember the name now. And there's like a hologram in front of him, and it's going through all the classic Doctors, and he steps through it and stuff. So that's very cool. That harks back to all that stuff. But one of my biggest issues I had with Moffat was, and this was as I was watching through it, there was no mention of Rose or Martha or Donna. There was nothing with any poignancy anyway, nothing of any importance. And I kind of thought, well, this is wrong. You can't, Stephen Moffat can't just erase the past, 5 seasons or seasons. I hate that. US. He couldn't just, completely ignore the past 5-6 series of the show, because in that respect it kind of does feel like a reboot. It does feel like this is fresh and new and doesn't really want to reference anything before that. But then as I started to get through it and think about it more, it's like, well, this is kind of what the show needs, doesn't it? Because along with the Doctor regenerating, along with the Doctor, changing his persona, his character, whatever, the show needs to regenerate as well. I think that's key to its survival, and that it needs to change, it needs to adapt, it needs to move forward. And that's exactly what Stephen Moffat, gave us. He gave us a new look on the Doctor, the show, the companions, all that stuff, is new. And, when you look at it like that, it's okay. It's because you do want this kind of really big continuity and canon thing going on. You want that consistency. But at the same time, you do still need the show to move on and adapt and stuff. So, if you're getting into you're sitting down with your buddies and you're talking Doctor Who, or you're on a forum and you see people discussing this stuff, just jump in and say, look, this is, because I think people are quick to judge and quick to jump in and condemn Russell T Davies for not doing something a certain way, and they're quick to jump down Moffat's throat and say, this is, you've ruined it and blah blah blah. if you look at the bigger picture, it's because of those guys and the way that they've done it that the show's been so successful. I think people forget that sometimes, that since Doctor Who's come back, it's been really, really successful and has gone global in a huge way, and has made superstars out of the people who were in the show. And they haven't done that on their own. It's because of people like Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat and the other producers that it's got to that level.
Look at you. You're young.
I'm really not,
No, but you are. Your eyes. You're younger than I've ever seen you.
You've seen me before then?
Doctor, please tell me you know who I am.
Who are you?
Right. Okay. Interesting.
What's wrong? You're acting like we've never done that before.
We haven't.
We haven't.
Oh, look at the time. It must be off. But it was very nice. It was good. It was unexpected. You know what they say? There's a first time for everything.
And a last time.
So when you hear people kind of complaining and slagging those guys off, it's like, well, hold on a minute. If they weren't there doing that, and if they weren't there doing it their way, then you wouldn't have Doctor Who on your screens. You would have literally nothing to moan about. And the only thing that you would be moaning about is that there's no Doctor Who on TV. So for me, they both have their merits. I mean, for me, Russell T Davies era I love because it has that kind of typical kind of TV Saturday night feel to it. It's got that very I'm not going to say soap kind of feel to it because that's wrong, but it's got a very much of a this kind of continuity feel to it, its own kind of internal continuity that just makes it feel like I love watching this because I know that what I'm seeing now and what I'm watching is very much connected to everything that we've seen before. And I think just the way that it was made, especially if you look back to the first series with Chris Eccleston, that was very, very very made for TV in quote marks, and that kind of transpired all the way through up until the Tennant years. And then when you look at that versus the Stephen Moffat era, I don't know, it's good in a different way, because to me the Stephen Moffat stuff, it doesn't look like it's made for TV. And you're probably thinking this guy's nuts, but the Russell T Davies stuff, it looks like it was made exactly for the medium that you're watching it on. Whereas the Stephen Moffat stuff, it looks like they're kind of miniature films, because the production value is so high, and they're really, really cinematic, and they're really, they're worthy of big screen. They're worthy of going to the cinema to watch it. The scale is very big and it's quite epic, and not just in visuals, but the soundtrack is, Murray Gold's music is very, very big and epic, and the theme "I Am the Doctor" is very, it feels like a movie soundtrack rather than a TV. Not all of it, but just that's the general feeling that I get. And that's my two biggest differences between the two eras. So in closing, I just wanted to get that off my chest. Really, it's something that I can't be bothered to just type away in forums and just get shouted down and and that kind of stuff. But I did want to just mention that and talk through it. So the Russell T Davies era absolutely fantastic. The Stephen Moffat era absolutely fantastic. Let's just enjoy both. And look forward to what the next era of Doctor Who is going to be. I'm not sure how long Stephen Moffat is going to stay as the showrunner, I'm not sure how long Peter Capaldi is going to be the Doctor. As far as I know, if you listen back to the podcast episode 2, when I did an interview with Neil Perriman, he had said that Capaldi had only signed a very short-term contract, and his view was that Peter Capaldi could be with us just for one season, like an Eccleston. So I'm not sure on that. I don't know, but I think when Stephen Moffat steps down and we get somebody else that takes over, whoever that might be, they're going to put their own stamp on it, and then there's going to be 3 different eras in the modern world of Doctor Who to like and slag off and all the rest of it. So the 2 eras, I love them both. Let's just enjoy. So that wraps up that little talk of mine, that little rant. I'm now going to have a look at the classic DVD retrospective. But before I do that, I just want to give a few shout outs. I've been on the social stuff and asking you guys what your favourite classic Doctor Who DVDs are, and I've had half a dozen replies, so thank you very much for getting back to me. All on Facebook, funnily enough. When I've done this thing before, I've had them on Twitter, but these ones have come through Facebook, so thank you very much for liking my page and replying back to me. That's very cool. So the first one comes from Adam on Facebook, and his favourite classic story is Remembrance of the Daleks. I don't know if you guys know Adam. He runs a very, very cool geek blog called The Geek's Handbag. You can find that online, thegeekshandbag.com. You can find him on Twitter at The Geek's Handbag. So we've been talking quite a lot actually online over the last couple of weeks. And he really, really knows his Doctor Who, and I really recommend heading over to check out his videos. If you head over to the site, there's links to like his YouTube stuff, and nip over to Facebook as well and like his page. He's a really nice guy. So Remembrance of the Daleks. I think Sylvester McCoy. I didn't expect him to say this one, but I think he just wanted to step away from the usual suspects and kind of mix it up a bit. So Remembrance. I haven't seen this one. And the other suggestions that you guys sent in, if I haven't seen it, I'm going to check them out. So thank you very much for these. So that's the first one, Remembrance of the Daleks. Jeff Waddle on Facebook, he has suggested The Talons of Weng Chiang. Now I have seen this one. This one is fantastic. One of my favourite Tom Baker episodes or stories, and it's just really, really. It's one of those classic stories where it's just got such a good setup and a good kind of lie back and then just enjoy the ride. You don't have to think too much about it. You don't have to put yourself into it too much. It's just got that really nice, just cruise through it. And it also gives us 2 really good characters, Yago and Lightfoot, and incidentally they've actually got a new audiobook adventure by way of Big Finish that's out recently, or is due to be out very soon. So that's really worth checking out. So The Talons of Weng Chiang, Jeff Waddle, thank you very much. My good friend Nick Gill, also on Facebook, he has suggested The Demons, an old John Pertwee story. And it's kind of a weird link back to Adam and the Geek's Handbag, because one of his videos on YouTube is he goes back and visits the location where they shot the demons, and he kind of goes around the different locations, the big church that was destroyed in the story, and he chats to a couple of the locals and stuff. That's very cool. So my buddy Nick, he really likes his classic Doctor Who. We've spoken briefly about it a few times, and yeah, I know Nick very well outside of the social stuff. So thank you very much for that, buddy. Next up is Ethan Cronin on Facebook. His favourite is The Time Warrior. Again, this is one I haven't seen, so I will be checking it out. Thank you very much. Helen Jones on Facebook. She actually started following me on Twitter as well, and I have to say she's got one of the scariest profile pics I've seen. I don't know if it's your face, Helen, but whoever's on your profile pic, I'm assuming it's you. You've given yourself the kind of possessed zombie kind of look, which absolutely scared the crap out of me when I went onto your profile after you started following me. So thank you for the follow, but potentially change your profile pic so I can sleep tonight. And your favourite story was Pyramids of Mars, which is another classic Tom Baker. So this is one of my faves, actually. So I've got 3 Tom Baker faves: The Talons of Wing Chiang, Pyramids of Mars, and Genesis of the Daleks. So Pyramids of Mars, I actually spoke about that one on the last podcast, and what a fantastic story that is. That's one of those really nice contained stories where it all kind of happens in just one location. And again, it's got a really good supporting cast, good story. Sutek, the bad guy, is really good character, and overall that was really well made, that one. The effects weren't too bad, the props are really good, and again the support casts were pretty cool on that. So thank you very much, Helen Jones. And then lastly, again through Facebook, Kai McNamee, I hope I'm saying that right, McNamee. His favourite is The Curse of Fenric, another McCoy story. He's actually described his suggestion as McCoy and Aldred are at their best, and Fenric is the best one-off villain in the Whoniverse. So out of all these, this is another one that I'm still to watch. I actually bought it on DVD the last time I was at Forbidden Planet, a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago now. So I've got it, I've just yet to watch it. So I will definitely be watching that one very, very soon. So thank you very, very much for getting in contact with me. It's really interesting to see which classic stories are kind of doing it for you guys. So let's crack on and get on with the classic retrospective, Colin Baker's Attack of the Cybermen.
Don't do that!
I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were so scared.
I'm not scared, I was thinking, what do you want?
Well, I was thinking too. You know that man we found back there? Do you think the alien killed him? And if he did, how do you think it'll respond to us?
With gratitude. After all, I do have the means of getting it off this planet.
I only hope it believes you.
Well, if it doesn't, I shall beat it into submission with my charm.
So, Attack of the Cybermen. This was another first for me. I didn't pick this one up on DVD. This was actually one of the ones that was on the Horror Channel. For those of you not aware, the Horror Channel have started to put out some classic Doctor Who stories. I think they do it during the day, and then they repeat it again in the evening. So I just went through and recorded a load of them in bulk. And Attack of the Cybermen was the one that I watched at the weekend. And I haven't really seen. I've only seen 2 or 3 of the Colin Baker stuff. And while he's not my favourite Doctor, I didn't mind this one too much. But there was that one aspect that did let it down a bit for me, and I'll come on to that in a little while. But overall it's not too bad, as it was put out back in 1985, so when I was a wee lad. I was 5 years old at the time, and this was season 22. Series. Bloody hell. Whoever invented the word season in America should be bloody decapitated. I hate that word, season. You'll probably hear me say that every single podcast. So, Series 22, back in 1985. And it's... like I said, overall I didn't mind it. I thought it was okay. Any Doctor Who story featuring, you know, one of the larger kind of A-list monsters, in this case the Cybermen, obviously, tends to be pretty good, as long as they've got a decent writer. The story is in 2 parts. The first kind of opening scene that sets the story up is 2 guys in the sewers in London are attacked by something which you don't see at first, but it's obvious that it's the Cybermen, because they're the main monsters, villains if you like, in the story. And then it cuts to the Doctor. He's just fresh off regeneration, so I think in himself he feels fine, but the companion is still Peri from Peter Davison, and she's a bit worried about him. She feels that he's a bit kind of all over the place, and because he's kind of pulling the TARDIS to pieces. He's trying to repair the chameleon circuit, so that it can blend in a little bit better. If you remember from the regeneration, where he first sits up, you know, once Peter Davison has gone and it's him, he sits down and he kind of looks around the TARDIS and he's like, you know, change, my dear, and not a moment too soon. So he wants to get to work straight away and kind of fix what he feels is, you know, is a subpar kind of TARDIS. So he's trying to fix these things, and in the process of doing that, he kind of picks up the signal, because back on Earth, there was a guy who was in a character called Lytton, a former mercenary, a Dalek mercenary who appeared in Resurrection of the Daleks. He's now on Earth, and he's a mobster, like a kind of a typical London small-time thief, gangster type of character. And at first you think that he's just planning a bank heist, but in actual fact he's getting some guys together, and he's heading down into the sewers, because he wants to contact the Doctor, and the only way he knows how to do that is by setting off a transmitter near to the source of the Cybermen. So, you know, where these people have been attacked down in the sewer, that's where he kind of leads his small crew, and he sets off the transmitter. The Doctor picks this up, heads to Earth, and then sets about finding it. And when he does, he escapes, because when he gets there, he doesn't. I think the first signal that he searches for, he realises is a dummy. So when he finds the proper signal, he ends up in the sewers himself with Peri, and he kind of runs into an undercover police officer who's actually investigating Lytton. And then it cuts to another scene back on the Cybermen world of Telos. These 2 guys who are essentially slaves. They escape from their party, and they take on a couple of Cybermen and stuff, and try and go in disguise to try and get into Cyber Control, because they know that there's a time travel vessel or craft of some kind there. So their plan is to grab hold of this and escape from Telos. And then it cuts back, and then the end of part 1 just sees the Doctor and Peri and this guy Russell, who is the undercover police officer. When they go back to the TARDIS, they get ambushed by the Cybermen, and they get brought to the Cyber Control on Earth, where they get shown Lytton and the other guy, Griffiths, and the guy Russell, the undercover guy, he does manage to actually take on a couple of Cybermen, but he ultimately gets killed himself. And it kind of closes on a cliffhanger. The cyber leader on Earth, he orders the Cybermen to kill Perry, and that's how part 1 ends. It's kind of a cliffhanger. It's quite cool. And then into part 2, the Doctor's kind of given him an ultimatum. He's like, if you don't let Perry go, I'm gonna put the TARDIS into self-destruct, and we're all history. And so the leader, he kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever, lets her go, which is a bit weak, really. And I'll come on to that in a little while. So it turns out that the Cybermen need to get back to Telos, so they do that. The Doctor, they all jump in the TARDIS. Although he's prisoner in the TARDIS, he sets a course for. Although he's a prisoner in the TARDIS, he sets a course for Telos. But instead of ending up in the cyber control, they end up actually in the tombs, and they discover that there's these inhabitants of Telos known as the Cryons, and they were there before the Cybermen. The Cybermen kind of supposedly wiped them out, but they were there first, apparently. So then what happens is in the tombs, the cyber tombs, these Cryons have kind of been messing with them, so when they do get woken up, they just go on this rampage. They look all beaten up and stuff. And the Doctor, so Perry, she manages to escape with the other two, Lytton and Griffiths. They run off during this kind of initial battle when these old Cybermen wake from the tombs, but the Doctor gets imprisoned in one of them with one of the Cryons. I think she's the Cryon leader. Her name's Flast, not to be confused with Flask. Her name's Flast, and I'm sure it's a she. Don't know if I should be saying that or not. I just assumed it was a she. It looked like a woman playing the part. Anyway, it turns out that this guy Lytton has been working with the Cryons all along. Surprise, surprise. And it was their plan to get the Doctor there so that they can divert Halley's Comet actually into the Earth instead of going past it. So that will then basically mean that they'll be incapable of protecting itself from the attack by Mondus. So the Doctor's kind of surprised by this. He's like, whoa. This is... he's really shocked at the whole thing. And while he's locked up with this Cryon, he finds this supply of a substance called Vastiol, which is a mineral basically that is kept below freezing, but when it heats up above freezing, it's like really explosive and stuff. So he uses it to escape. He plants a sonic lance into it to heat up. And while this is going on, Lytton and Griffiths, they meet up with the two slaves from before. They're trying to get through cyber control, but that doesn't work out, and they all get killed with the exception of Lytton, who then ends up being kind of part converted into Cyberman. And then when the Doctor discovers that Lytton was actually working with the Cryons, kind of feels a bit guilty, so goes off to save him. And when he gets there, he finds he's kind of part converted into Cyberman. He can't really help him too much, but then the cyber controller turns up and Lytton kind of stabs him. He goes down, and then another Cyberman turns up, Lieutenant whatever. Bit of a shootout, and then the Doctor essentially is unable to save him, but he has killed the Cybermen. Jumps in the TARDIS, off they go, and then the Vastiol mineral essentially heats up and then just erupts and just blows the shit out of the tombs and cyber control and everything. And then the Doctor's off, ready to start a new adventure. So that's the story and the setup, and it's not too bad.
Didn't go very well, did it?
Earth safe. So is history and the web of time.
I meant on a personal level. I don't think I've ever misjudged anybody quite as badly as I did Lytton.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, the Cybermen in this, they're kind of a bit lame. I'm not really used to seeing them that way. They're only kind of, the stuff that they do in this episode is nothing more than, very slowly wander around and talk for a little while, and that's pretty much it. There isn't much in the way of action. There isn't much there's a couple of little shootouts and stuff, and the one, the best one is right at the end when the Doctor dispatches the cyber controller and this other Cyberman, and that really is it. I mean, there's a couple of other little bits when they get to Telos and they're at the tombs and the Cybermen are looking for Peri and the Doctor. But it's not really much. I mean, there are some really, really good Cyberman stories where they seem to be a bit more mobile and a bit more with it, and not defeated so easily. And I know it's the classic stuff, and the costumes are not all that. And if you look at some of the more modern Cybermen stories, like the David Tennant one, I think it's The Age of Steel or something like that. There's the Cybermen are they walk very fast and very marchy, and they're a lot more threatening and stuff like that. Whereas in this one, it's just they move kind of slowly. They just plod around, have a chat with one another. The plan's going okay, yeah, and that's it. That's your lot in terms of Cybermen. So that for me let the story down quite a bit. The fact that they were able to be talked into doing something so quickly and so easily by the Doctor, and even like when they capture some of the humans, like Lytton and the other kind of thugs that are with him, they don't kill them. They don't do anything. They're easily talked out of their initial plan. So kind of a letdown for me on this one, the Cybermen. The other letdown for me slightly was, I hate to say it, and that is the Doctor in this. Like I said at the beginning, he's not one of my favourite Doctors. I don't mind him, Colin Baker as the Doctor. And sometimes I hate myself for saying that, because anyone that's met Colin Baker would know that he's such a nice guy, and the way he was treated by the BBC at the time, and the way that he was almost forced to leave the show and stuff, it's any wonder the guy is still such an ambassador for the show. It's quite amazing. So in a way, there's a tiny part of me that has a little bit of guilt for saying these things, but that's my opinion. That's just the way I feel about that particular era. I think the writing was a bit it got a bit dark, I think, and a little bit not on the mature side, but slightly kind of sub-violent, and a little bit just showing its dark side a little. And I mean, this episode's not too bad. As far as I understand, it's the first episode of that series. Series 22, it's the first one, so he's fresh off a regeneration. And there's a couple of nice little scenes where Peri's kind of saying to him, this is, very soon from your regeneration. Are you sure your mind is in the right place? Because, you were calling me like past companions earlier, and he does seem a little bit zany in this at times. Overall he's not bad. I mean, there were a couple of good bits to it. The locations were quite cool. I'm not sure, maybe somebody can let me know and contact me on this, but the junkyard where he lands the TARDIS in London, is that supposed to be the same location as An Unearthly Child? Is it meant to be that place? Is it meant to tie in somehow? Is it meant to be, or is it just any old junkyard? I'm not sure. And also I did have a little chuckle when at the beginning the Doctor's kind of got all the wires out of the TARDIS and stuff, and he's having a crack at trying to repair the chameleon circuit, and it ends up turning into an organ at one point, and then a big whatever it is. So that was quite funny. Actually, it was a decorated, apparently anyway, there's, after a pipe organ, It was a decorated stove at first, then it was the organ, and then it was an ornamental gateway, apparently. Yeah, so that was Attack of the Cybermen. Like I said, I found it okay. Probably not one that I will revisit that often, but I still think it was quite a good story. And Colin Baker wasn't too bad. He's been in a lot better Doctor Who stories, don't get me wrong, but this wasn't too bad. And I've certainly seen worse from the classic years. So if I had to give this a rating out of 10, I would probably give this a 6, which I think is pretty fair. So that wraps up the classic retrospective. And that is a wrap for episode 4. Thank you very much again for joining me and listening to my rants and rabbles about all things Who. Once again, a big thank you to the guys that have contacted me via Facebook and letting me know your favourite classic Doctor Who DVDs. There are a few in there that I haven't seen yet, so when I go to pick up my next batch of classic DVDs, I will be sure to grab those and check them out, so thank you very much for that. You can find me on all the usual social channels. If you want to have a chat on Twitter, you can find me at Big Blue Box PCast. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/Big Blue Box Podcast. And you can find these audio podcasts and other bits and pieces over at the site www.bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. Until next time, my name's Gary. Thank you once again for joining me, and Alonzi.